Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Journalism and New Media Studies, SOJNMS, Master's Program, Master of Arts, Journalism and Digital Media, MAJDM, First Year, MJM 0 to 3 Broadcast and Online Journalism, Block-1 Radio Journalism, Unit-1 Radio, a Sound Medium, 1.0 Introduction. This is the first unit of Block 1 where we will be introducing you to radio. How it was initially put to use more as a medium for the military and eventually has been used for the entire population across the world. Before we go into the details of the core issue radio journalism, we need to first properly understand what is radio. We know that all of you have been exposed to radio in some way or other and believe that you know what is radio. As a student of journalism and mass communication, you need to be familiar with the nuances of the medium, and therefore we will discuss all basic aspects of radio in this unit. 1.1 Learning Outcomes. After going through this unit, you should be able to describe the characteristics of radio, explain the elements of radio, explain the importance of sound effects, enumerate the strengths and weaknesses of radio as a medium, and outline the future trends in radio broadcasting. 1.2 Radio technology and growth. Radio is actually the technology of transmitting audio signals over radio waves from one point to other wirelessly. However, when we talk of radio, we tend to think about it as only a gadget through which we get information, education, and entertainment. Most of the times we forget that radio broadcasts are created through a complex technology. It was invented by Guglielmo Marconi. Among others, Indian physicist Jagdish Chandra Bose too made a major contribution to early radio research. Radio was used in both the world wars as a very successful means of military communication. But the technology got established as a medium of public communication after the World War I.
In India, radio clubs in Bombay and Madras started broadcasting as early as 1923, but organized regular broadcasting started only from 23 July 1927 when the first radio station was inaugurated in Bombay by Lord Irwin. The Indian Broadcasting Company, which owned the station, had to wind up its operations in 1930. However, soon the government took broadcasting in its hands, and from April 1930, the Indian Broadcasting Service, under the Department of Industries and Labour, commenced its operations on an experimental basis. On 8 June 1936, the Indian State Broadcasting Service became All India Radio. During World War II, the use of radio became more diversified. Over and above the usage in military communication, radio was extensively used for propaganda by both the parties in war. By that time, civilian radio had also become an established phenomenon in many parts of the world. Shortly after the outbreak of the World War II in 1939, German radio stations regularly started broadcasting for India, primarily in Hindustani as well as in various other regional languages. These news broadcasts routinely and intentionally exaggerated the truth, withheld crucial information, and/or broadcast downright false stories, both about the war in Europe and about developments in India. That was also the time when the Azad Hind Radio and Congress Radio started resorting to political message dissemination. Azad Hind Radio was a radio service that was started in Germany in 1942 under the leadership of Subhash Chandra Bose in a bid to encourage Indians to fight for freedom. Similarly, Indian National Congress also operated a radio, namely the Congress Radio. After Mahatma Gandhi and other Congress leaders were arrested on 9 August 1942 at the launch of Quit India movement, the idea of starting the Congress Radio took wings and broadcasting started clandestinely from 27 August 1942 and continued for about 3 months. At the time of independence, India had 6 radio stations, whereas 3 went to Pakistan. India demonstrated tremendous progress in the sector of radio broadcasting over a period of time. Presently, we have 227 full-fledged stations with studios in the country, 1.2.1 analog and digital. Analog. In analog radio transmission, there are 3 frequency bands: medium frequency, commonly known as medium wave or megawatt; high frequency, commonly known as short wave or SW, and very high frequency, VHF. The modulation technology that is used for analog radio transmission in megawatt and SW is amplitude modulation, AM, while VHF is transmitted through frequency modulation, FM. The engineering of these phones is very complex. But as a student of journalism, you need to understand how these worked for radio communication. Short waves of sound can travel far as the transmission is through sky wave propagation, where the radio wave is beamed towards the sky and comes back to surface of Earth after getting reflected by ionosphere, a layer of ionized particles, several kilometers above the Earth in the atmosphere. However, there is a lot of distortion in this kind of transmission, as the sound came in waves would crackle during rain, storm and lightning. Medium waves, as the name suggests, have a medium wavelength. Compared to short wave transmission, the sound would not travel that far but would be clearer and less distorted. However, the transmission of the waves is not blocked by hills, mountains or tall buildings. The propagation technology adopted in case of medium wave is ground wave propagation, i.e. the radio wave travels along the surface of ground. Availability of megawatt band is limited, therefore the same frequency can be allotted to different stations which are hundreds of kilometers apart. Thus, on days when the weather is clear, mostly during winter months, stations with same frequency bands may interfere with each other. But these are rare occasion. In India, for a long time Air's home service had many medium wave stations with some regional programs being simulcast on short wave too. The maximum expansion of all India radio stations was in medium wave till the end of last century. According to Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, TRAI, consultation paper, megawatt broadcasts cover almost 99% of Indian population and about 90% of geographical area. AIR now has a total number of 135 megawatts transmitters and 48 SW transmitters. FM or frequency modulation uses a different technology than what is used in megawatt or SW transmission, which works on AM or amplitude modulation. In AM technology, the receiver can receive distortions and disturbances because of weather. In the case of FM technology, the distortion of transmission is minimal. The FM transmission is often called a line-of-sight transmission. Because of the propagation technologies of SW and megawatt, the AM transmission can travel far and wide, whereas in FM transmission, sometimes a tall building or a hill can obstruct the sound from being transmitted further. Still, as the quality of the transmission is clear, it is a favored mode of radio communication now. The private radio stations as well as community radio stations all broadcast in FM mode. All India Radio has 495 FM transmitters as of now, and the number is still growing. The digital audio broadcasting (DAB) technology is an outcome of European research project which had begun in the 1980s. The first DAB channel was launched in 1995 by the Norwegian Broadcasting Corporation, which was closely followed by Swedish Radio and BBC. Since 1990s, DAB receivers have been available in many countries across the world. The most positive quality of DAB is that in a given bandwidth it can offer more spectrum than in analog mode. However, it is important that the recording of the content is also done in the same bitrate, or else the sound quality would fall. DAB reception is extremely compatible with mobile audio listening. In case of DAB, when the signal strength reaches a certain level, the quality deteriorates rapidly, whereas in the case of analog, the quality deteriorates slowly. According to available data, 41 countries around the world are functioning in DAB as of 2018. As mentioned earlier, Norway was the first country to launch DAB, and in 2017 it also became the first country to completely switch national broadcasting to DAB and give up analog technology. Besides DAB, digital radio broadcasting has also been standardized through another standard called Digital Radio Mondiale (DRM). The DRM Consortium is an international not-for-profit organization comprised of broadcasters, network providers, transmitter and receiver manufacturers, universities, broadcasting unions, and research institutes. https://www.drm.org/about-us/mission/right. All India Radio has also adopted the international DRM model, and a few megawatt and SW transmitters of AIR are also broadcasting on digital platform. 1.3 Characteristics of radio. Every medium has its own characteristics which differentiates it from other media. To understand a medium is to understand its characteristics. We can enumerate the following as the characteristics of radio. 1.3.1 Audio medium. Radio is a medium which caters to only one sensory organ, i.e. the ears or the auditory organ. That is why radio is called an audio medium, which can be used and utilized even while we are doing other activities like driving, cooking, cleaning, etc. Everything in radio is about sound, music, voice, songs, etc. 1.3.2 Radio, an intimate medium. The communication over radio is viewed as a very intimate process. The connection that a listener feels with the program is very close and friendly. That is why radio presenters have always had a large fan following. Legendary names like Devki Nandan Pandey, Amin Sayani, Melville D. Mello, and some of the contemporary presenters, now popular as RJs, have a special place in the hearts of their listeners. I am sure you also have your own favorite RJs. When one listens to the radio, one has the feeling of listening to a friend who is talking to you. That is why it is now considered better to address the listener in singular form as my dear listener rather than listeners. 1.3.3 Literacy not a barrier. Unlike newspapers, radio is regarded as the medium of the poor and the illiterates. A radio listener need not be literate to understand what is being said. Moreover, as the language of radio communication is that of the spoken word as opposed to the written word, it is easy for the people to understand it. 1.3.4 Blind medium versus theater of the mind. It is often said that radio is a blind medium as it does not have visuals to support it. This in fact is the strength of radio and not a weakness, because the visuals can be imagined by the listeners according to their sensibility and imagination. Thus, till one watched the Indian epic Mahabharata on television, one was free to imagine how big Bhim was and how much he ate. But with Mahabharata being broadcast on television, Bhim became a 6 feet something man next door. That is why radio is called the theater of the mind. Since it engages the mind of the listener, it is also called a hot medium. 1.4 Elements of radio. As mentioned earlier, radio is a medium of sound, which comprises of, most importantly, voice, music and sound effects. 1.4.1 Voice, spoken word. It is invariably the human voice which connects with the audience over radio. It is the voices of newsreader, presenter, anchor, RJ that we respond to on radio. They provide a personality to the program with which we can connect and identify. 1.4.1 Voice, spoken word. It is invariably the human voice which connects with the audience over radio. It is the voices of newsreader, presenter, anchor, RJ that we respond to on radio. They provide a personality to the program with which we can connect and identify. Situations. A pause can create a meaning in itself. Just think about such situations. Though radio is a medium of sounds, silence performs a very important role by giving a natural effect to the program. People give pause and use silences even while talking to enhance the effect of what has been spoken. 1.5 Audience. It is often said that audience is at the heart of every program. Therefore, understanding various types of audiences is very important in the process of programming. By listening to the audiences and responding to their queries, radio can provide the space for plurality required in media. Moreover, it is important to remember that radio gives voice to the voiceless, as it is easily accessible to the poor and the marginalized where illiteracy is not a barrier. Therefore, two-way communication with the audience is required so that the programs keep evolving according to the needs and aspirations of the audience. This is why All India Radio had instituted the Audience Research Unit way back in 1946 to carry out formative research to know more about the audience, their demographics, and their preferences. Characteristics of radio audience. Audience can be divided according to habits, gender, age, and professional engagement. Audience habits can be identified according to the time of listening, for example, morning listeners, drive time listeners, late night listeners, habitual listeners, etc. Have you seen your mother, father, or some elder in the family switching on the radio first thing in the morning? They are the morning listeners. Some of them will stay with the radio throughout the day. They are the habitual listeners. In the cities, most of the times you will see people listening to radio while driving. Similarly, a number of young people who stay away from home and are working or studying during the day listen to late-night shows. All India radio programming is designed to cater to the specific requirements of gender and age of the audience too. Therefore, you will find program for women, children, young adults, senior citizens, etc. on AIR. Similarly, there are many programs which are targeted towards the profession of the audience, for example, programs for farmers, industrial workers, defense personnel, school teachers or students. Target audience. At the heart of generating programs based on such criterion is the concept of target audience. It is believed that all programs cannot appeal to everybody. There may be some programs which can have universal appeal. However, there are certain niche areas where the target audience is specific. Therefore, programs are designed keeping the target audience in mind. Most of the advertisements are ideated and placed accordingly as well. Private FM channels in fact target specific audiences and brand themselves, keeping that in view. 1.6 Sound effects in radio programs. Sound effects are the backbone of any radio program. These create the ambience and help us locate the program in a particular mood and place. For example, to create the feel of a road journey, we shall use the sounds of a moving car, horn, and other such ambient sound effects. These can be used for such things as setting and place, conveying action, solving certain narrative problems, and evoking characteristics. Effects should sound as though they are being heard by the character. Dubbing adds extra sound effects or brings disparate sounds together. However, care should also be taken that the sound effects do not dominate the narration dialogue. If any, sound effects can be categorized as a natural sound or nat sound is not created but is present naturally while the recording is happening. These are usually present during recording in outdoor locations. However, during such recordings it should be carefully monitored that the nat sounds do not create noise and thereby reduce the quality of the recording. Nowadays, very sophisticated microphones are also available to catch nat sound without creating noise. B. Recorded sound effects. These come from the sound effects bank of any radio station. Once upon a time, radio professionals used to travel to different locales to collect varieties of sound effects. Certain sound effects were also created during the recording process. For example, if the scene in a radio drama requires that a character is drinking tea, then the clinking sound of a cup being lifted and put down on the plate was created in the studio using a cup and a plate, as that gives it an authentic feel. In fact, old drama studios always had a sound room attached to it to make the recording process smooth. Nowadays, stock sound effects are easily available free of cost on the internet. Created sound effects can be of many varieties. A. Ambience. It creates the sense of place where the action is happening and even when or which time of the day or night. It is a very subtle form of effect which needs much nuanced editing. B. Discrete or spot effects indicates the range of usual action of a particular event. Say there is a meeting going on, the sound of paper moving, something being written on the paper, or even coughing or muttering will all be discrete or spot sound effects. C. Crowds. These sounds do not carry any meaning except locating the event in a particular space. For example, the market space crowd sound will be different from the crowd sound in a meeting or a wedding or in a cricket match. Hence, a lot of care is required to create suitable sound of crowds. 1.7 Music in radio programs. Music is the mainstay of radio. The ideal ratio of spoken word to music programs is regarded as 30-70. Film songs, folk songs and classical music, both vocal and instrumental, are various types of music which we hear on radio. Radio programs also use short pieces of music as signature tunes or theme music for various programs to give the program an identity as well as to differentiate one program from the other. Signature tune is also used to attract the attention of listener to the program. Stations also have musical identification tunes. All India radio transmissions opening signature tune, composed in Rag Shivranjani, was the creation of a Jewish refugee named Walter Kaufmann. A Czech national, he had fled to India from the Nazis and was the director of music programs at AIR from 1937 to 46. Music augments the quality of programs in the following ways. A. It adds vibrancy to any spoken word program and helps in the flow of the program to keep the listeners glued to it. B. It helps in breaking the monotony of any program. As radio is only appealing to the auditory organ of a person, sometimes a program can feel monotonous. This is more so in the case of talks and discussions, and sometimes in the case of news too. However, it needs to be kept in mind that usage of music should be appropriate to the tone and tenor of the program. C. It is used to create effects of happy or unhappy feelings, fear or joy in the program. In other words, music is used in radio to create and communicate emotions. For example, sad music for sad emotions, bright music for happy emotions and somber music for serious emotions. D. Music can suggest scenes and locations. For example, if you have to create the ambience of a bright early morning situation, this can be done by playing a pleasing note on the sitar flute piano along with the sound of chirping birds, or maybe a devotional song. E. It can express actions too. A fast music can suggest fast movement of a character or situation. 1.8 The role of script in radio programs. A radio script ensures the flow and continuity of a program. It is the basic guideline or framework that an anchor RJ presenter has to follow. As time is very precious in radio, the script helps in tightening up the program and maintaining its professionalism. Some programs are fully scripted, for example, news, drama, novel reading, talks, etc., while others are semi-scripted, for example, discussion, interviews, running commentary of sports or other such programs. Scripted programs require rehearsals and semi-scripted programs require clarity and research on the subject matter for the background material to be used. When required, basic rules of radio script writing are to use simple words, short sentences, one idea per sentence and rounded off statistics. It is always preferable to write in present tense and active voice. You will get to know more about script writing in the next unit. 1.9 Strengths and weaknesses of radio. All media have their own strengths and weaknesses. To optimize the use of any medium, we must draw upon the strengths of that medium. To exploit full potential of any medium, we must understand its strengths and limitations. 1.9.1 Strengths of radio as a medium of mass communication. A. Universal coverage and appeal. Because of the reach of radio, it has near universal coverage. In India, radio covers about 92% of the geographical area and more than 99% of the population. Radio has a universal appeal for both urban and rural population. B. Mobile medium. It can be carried along wherever one travels. Now, because of mobile telephony, it has become even more portable. To watch television, one usually has to sit at one place. But radio can be heard while walking, driving or doing other household chores. C. There are three major hurdles in the path of meaningful mass media communication in India, viz. I. Illiteracy, 2. Access, that is reach of media in remote places, and 3. Affordability. It becomes difficult for a poor uneducated villager from a remote place to access newspapers or television even if the reach is there. Radio is the medium which has the inherent advantage to overcome these barriers. Therefore, radio is regarded as the medium of masses. D. It is very quick. It is probably the fastest way to get news instantly. You may have noticed that sometimes at the time of breaking any news, television has only sound or speech, maybe from reporter or affected person. Visual footage comes at a later stage. E. It activates or keeps engaged your mind and thus called hot medium or active medium and also theater of mind. F. Low cost production and dissemination of content for radio is relatively cheap. A radio set is quite affordable in comparison to a television set. Radio does not need electric supply for it to run, but television needs electricity. Production cost of a radio program is quite low in comparison to television program. A basic radio station requires minimal investment. The cost of transmitter has gone down. With radio being received on mobile phone instruments, the cost has further gone down. G. Cost-effective advertising. With advertising on radio, a brand can dominate its category with relatively less spending. Any brand can be established through this medium with very low cost as the production cost of radio advertisements is quite low compared to film or TV. Good supplementary medium. Radio is a good supplementary medium and can add to other media in message transmission. Have you ever thought why people listen to radio commentary while watching a match on TV? It is the ideal and most effective medium for visually challenged. 1.9.2 Weaknesses of radio. A. No visual support. As mentioned earlier, radio is a medium meant for the auditory organ, i.e., ears. This might lead to loss of information if there is distraction within a program. Visuals can hold the viewers to the program, but with only audio people might get distracted, leading to a loss of information. B. Sometimes due to channel surfing, reception of messages might be incomplete. This is more relevant when we tune into radio for music. If a station is giving out some message, as we are more interested in the music, we might tend to change the station and in the process lose out on the message. C. Most of the time it is difficult to provide lengthy information in a program. If a radio program wants to give a lot of details of a fact, it might become too long and boring. D. It may not be suitable for demonstration or skill development. Likewise, it cannot lucidly present statistics or complex data. E. Messages might be easily forgotten. As it is not easy to go back to the program, unlike a newspaper, there is ample chance of forgetting the message. 1.10 Looking at the future. Invention of radio was a scientific and technological marvel, and the evolution of radio over the past century has seen wonderful new strides in broadcast technology. From the days of amplitude modulation to frequency modulation, radio has consistently made use of and benefited from technological advancements. From the bulky and heavy radio sets of yore to adoption of mobile telephony for reception, radio has seen and successfully met many challenges. 1.10.1 New platforms for radio. It has been reported extensively in India that the number of transistor sets being bought has come down drastically. Now people are increasingly using radio in cars and on mobile phones. Satellite radio, direct-to-home, DTH, radio through set-top boxes have been there for a while. All India Radio has many channels on Doordarshan's DTH platform. The latest avenue that has come up in a very big way is broadcasting through internet. Many listeners around the world have started using internet radio. In India too, All India Radio has adopted it in a big way with live streaming of many of its channels, which can be heard on computers as well as mobile apps. Radio content is also becoming available through podcasting or audio on demand, which provides listeners the facility to listen to their favorite programs at a time of their own convenience. Even on website of All India Radio and some other popular broadcasting organizations, audio versions of the news and certain other programs are available, along with texts to make these accessible to the hearing impaired also. Though it is not the radio that we have known traditionally, but it is radio in its new avatar. Similarly, websites like Pandora, Spotify and many others have added podcasting to the world of radio in a big way, and this has become an important space now. 1.10.2 Changing audience profile. Radio has seen massive changes in its audience profile through the ages. When radio started in India in 1920, as it was a costly gadget. The receiving sets were expensive and people had to pay a regular license fee. It was a box-like apparatus and needed electricity to run. Initially, the programs were meant for people who were urban, well-off and educated. However, with radio coming under the government ambit and particularly after India attained independence in 1947, the programs were created for the entire population, including the socio-economically disadvantaged sections. The most democratic change in radio programming came when it became mobile through transistor. It liberated radio from having to sit in one corner of the house and made it possible for it to move around. Moreover, the dependence on electricity was eradicated. Next liberation in radio in India happened when government lifted the provision of license fee and made it free for all. In independent India, the government regarded radio as the medium for development communication, and that led to further democratization of the audience profile. Next change came with the proliferation of the private FM channels. These stations are targeted towards the comparatively younger and urban, upwardly mobile audience with substantial purchasing power. Community radio movement has now taken strong roots in our country, and that means micro-level programming for specific communities. Thus we can see the progressive change of the audience profile through the times. 1.10.3 Increasing interactivity. Some of the increasingly common two-way interactive radio features include digital displays. Information such as date, time, network, battery status, and menu options are presented on digital displays that make important information stand out at a quick glance. Some two-way radio sets also feature LCD color displays for enhanced readability. Bluetooth technology. With Bluetooth-equipped handsets, your two-way radio can communicate wirelessly with many types of wireless earpieces. This provides hands-free communication abilities, which can be especially useful for first responders. Text messaging. Combining audio and messaging communications in one portable device means twice the communication power for two-way radio users. Phone-in programs. Increase in the popularity of phone-in programs has made it more interactive and intimate. The responses have also become immediate. 1.11 Summary. We hope by now you have understood the characteristics of radio and its significance. How it is a medium of sound, and the visualization by the listener depends on the appropriate use of various audio elements. You should have also understood that it is an intimate and democratic medium. Radio has traversed from analog to digital platform. The role of radio has expanded and changed over the years from a totally public service medium of the masses to a medium of immense commercial potential. All India Radio, Akashvani, has discharged its role as the premier public service radio broadcaster of the country and made glorious contributions in the realm of providing information, including news, education and entertainment since pre-independence era. Thank you. Subscribe to our channel for more updates, and we will see you with the next chapter.